Back with you on Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. I'm asking you to head over to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your browser, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, tell us what you think about the show, and of course, follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. We get ready for the NBA Finals a little bit later this week as Boston and Golden State will hook up. Look, two of the better franchises without a doubt in the NBA right now. And if you look, the Celtics with a first-year head coach, couple of superstar players, play really good defense. Golden State, a team obviously built to win the NBA title. They've done it in the past. They've got all their stars in place. Even without Durant, they still look like they may be the best team in the NBA. So I asked the question, how close are the Hawks to either one of these franchises? If you look at the way that these two teams have done it, there are a lot of similarities to it. Number one is both of these franchises have drafted their superstar players. So if you look, the Celtics used the third overall pick on Jason Tatum in 2017. Jaylen Brown was the third overall pick in 2016. Marcus Smart, one of the other key players, was the sixth overall draft pick. Obviously, Golden State, we know that they drafted Draymond Green with the 11th, Draymond Green with the 35th overall pick in the second round. They took Steph Curry with the 7th overall pick in 2009, Klay Thompson in 2011 with the 11th overall pick. So both these teams have done a great job at finding their star core of players through the draft. The other thing that these two teams have done a really good job of is drafting their role players, guys who have been key contributors to their team. So look at the Celtics, for instance. Grant Williams was the 22nd pick in 2019. So he was a first-round pick. Robert Williams was the 27th pick in the 2018 draft. We mentioned about Draymond Green. How about Kevin Looney, 30th pick overall in the 2015 draft? Jordan Poole was the 28th pick in the 2019 draft. So they've both been able to draft their stars. They've both been able to draft some really key role players. And then they've also, whether trade, free agency, have done a good job to find a veteran to mix into their group and help them do what they do. Whether that's getting Andrew Wiggins and inserting him into Golden State's lineup, had a breakout season this year, all-star player, played terrific in the playoffs thus far, or an Al Horford for the Boston Celtics, who's given him some good moments. And look, he's in his first NBA Finals ever, and he's been a definite help to that team as far as getting to this point. So there are a lot of similarities to that. So how do we compare that to the Atlanta Hawks? Well, okay, we know the Hawks have drafted one superstar, right? So we got one in trade. They haven't found that second guy yet. Could that be DeAndre Hunter? I don't know. I would say this as a worst case scenario, that if we break down into we drafted stars, we drafted our role players, we add in a veteran, right? If that's the three kind of points of sort of similarity between these two franchises. Okay, the Hawks haven't drafted all of their stars yet. They have one, but you got to have more than that. You have to have more than one star on your team. Drafted role players. Okay, they drafted Kevin Huerter, they drafted DeAndre Hunter, they drafted John Collins. You feel pretty good about that, okay? Have they added a veteran in the mix to help them out? That could be Clint Capella, right? I mean, they brought Clint Capella over in a trade from Houston, who had pretty decent success as a player in Houston. So, yeah, they probably have that. So, the Hawks, though, and this is the hardest of the three things to figure out is how do you draft more superstars? How do you get more superstars? The Hawks may have to do this in a little bit different way where they have to trade or sign through free agency another superstar. And that's where it gets to be difficult because, look, if you can draft your stars, draft your key role players, then it's easy to mix in a veteran through trade or free agency or somebody like that. It gets hard when you have to try to either draft your superstar player or you have to trade or free agent because you better be an attractive enough franchise or you better be a team that looks like they're about to win to lure one of those guys or have the assets to be able to make a trade. And then when you start using your assets to make a trade, well, now you're getting rid of some of the things that helped you kind of get in this one. Then you have to get rid of some of your draft picks that are your role players in this, that, and the other. And that's what makes the NBA so difficult. And that's why you have to respect teams like Boston and Golden State when you look at the way that they have built this. They haven't gone in. I know they added Durant, but even look at right now, they haven't had to go in and way overspend or give up too much capital to bring another star in. They've been able to find their star players. And look, Tatum is as good as anybody in the league. He's, I don't know, maybe the best two-way player, him and Giannis, or maybe the two best two-way players in the entirety of the NBA. And obviously, Steph Curry is one of the greatest of all time. So they've been able to draft their superstars and keep those guys and build around those. Can the Hawks do that? I don't know. Because if the Hawks sit around and wait to draft another superstar caliber player, you could very much get past the prime of Collins, Dion. I mean, you can get past the prime of some of these guys, and you're looking up and saying, okay, by the time we find our next superstar, the rest of our team is sort of a little bit on that downslope. So the Hawks are in a tough position to have to go find that second guy. We know that that's what they need, right? We know that they need another guy to play with Trey, ideally a top flight scorer. But those guys are in such demand because there's so many teams that are looking for those guys. It's rare to be able to find two teams like Golden State and Boston in the NBA Finals where they had some similar blueprint. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but they drafted their core superstars, check for both teams. They've drafted their role players really well, check on all of that. And then they've been able to add a veteran or two that wasn't way overpriced. Wiggins was the number one overall pick in the draft, but he wasn't a way overpriced guy. Al Horford obviously is on the tail end of his career. He's not a way overpriced guy, but you get guys like that come in and make contributions on your team. And remember, obviously Golden State is a much older team than what Boston is, but Boston's a team that it's taken them 5, 6, 7 years to get to this point. So I'm not panicked about the Hawks and the idea of, hey, they have to be an NBA champion or get in the NBA Finals in the next year here. But how are you going to find that second guy? Because these two teams have given you a pretty good blueprint of how you build your squad. So all the things that the Hawks have wanted to be, they're not that far off from what these two franchises are, but they're trying to find the hardest thing that you can probably find in all of the NBA, and that is multiple superstar players, especially ones that you draft. And that's where you start to have to get into that game of what do we give up? How do we lure a guy? How much luxury tax money do we get into? It's not an easy position, but let's see what the Hawks do in this offseason, because this certainly has got to be a season to get themselves back into at least a legitimate Eastern Conference contender. All right, when we get back, I haven't seen this many battles for starting positions on the Falcons in quite a long time. Doesn't feel like many guys are locked into their spot right now. We'll talk about that next. It's Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.